Hola a todos, hola a todas, bienvenidos a nuestra nueva edición de VOR OnLive. Voy a cambiarme en inglés, pues esta conversación va a ser en inglés para dar la bienvenida a nuestros invitados y presentar VOR, ¿no? So welcome everyone to this edition of VOR. We have a very, very special conversation happening today. As you know, VOR comes from aeronautics, and it is a mechanism that emits signals that helps the pilot keep the journey. So in CENTRO, VOR involves a series of conversations, interventions, and dialogues that intend to explore new routes through creativity. And in that vein, we have an excellent conversation today because it is a conversation that has as its axes many different topics that interest CENTRO a lot. Of course, creativity is at the center of it, but also technology and future thinking, future design and art thinking. So we're going to get to see a lot of different ways in which future technology, society, science, and creativity come together to create projects that involve all of them and that are part of the interest of CENTRO to put technology, creativity, art, media, and a reflexive role of society at the forefront of its education. So I'm going to welcome our two speakers for today. Firstly, our very own Roberto Cabezas. He is the head of media design and technology at CENTRO. You have probably seen him before. And we also have a very special, there's Roberto. Hi, Roberto. And we have a very special guest coming from Ars Electronica. He is the executive director of Ars Electronica Futurelab, about which we'll be talking today. And Ars Electronica, as you all know, is one of the most important digital festivals in the world. So he'll probably join us in any second. So we're going to talk about technology, we're going to talk about society, we're going to talk about creativity, and we have the best people to do so. So how are you, Roberto? I'm sure that Horst will come in anytime. Yeah. There he is. There he is. Yeah. How are you, Horst? Welcome. So the floor is yours. Thank you both for joining us. I'm sure that we're going to learn a lot. We're going to have a great, innovative, and wonderful talk. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, hi, everybody. What's it in Spanish? Saludo todos.
Yes, saludos a todos. Thank you very much for joining us, Horst, and taking some of your time to speak about Ars Electronica. I think it's a wonderful mindset that you have, and thank you very much for sharing it. I think there's people eager to know a little bit more about the philosophy of Ars Electronica and Futurelab. And I also believe you are the perfect guest for us right now in terms of what CENTRO thinks around technology and what CENTRO also pushes forward in terms of hybrid mindsets and technology, science, design, creativity. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for all the people that's watching this VOR OnLive. I remember you guys that you can throw up your questions on the comments in whichever platform you're using, and I'll be taking out, and we're gonna have a great conversation, I'm sure. So, Horst, very welcome, and I think whenever you're ready, we can start.
Okay, doke. So let's jump to the next slide already at the very beginning. I've sent the entire stack to you of the slides because the videos, the embedded videos, might perform much better this way. What we have here is a little bit of history of the Ars Electronica. Since the Ars Electronica as a festival started way back in '79, the pre-Ars Electronica that came to it in '87 is, still one of the biggest, if not the biggest, award for cyber arts, computer art, cyber arts as we call it. The center that you can see in the background here is been opened in a different shape, though. In 1996, the shape that it has right now became alive in 2009. on the same location, more or less. At the same time, in 1996, the Ars Electronica Futurelab has opened, and that leads to the last point, which is this year the Futurelab's 25 years old. So we're celebrating the quarter of a century already at the Ars Electronica Futurelab.
Yeah, congratulations. I think it's plenty of time to be around in a very well, I don't know, like a very neat space to give reflection in terms of art and technology.
Yeah, and I think it's like really very, very early, and we ourselves are very often surprised about the fact that such a festival for art, technology, and society has happened for the first year in 79. This was even prior to any personal computer available on the market.
Yes.
The big thing in 79 was the announcement of a Walkman. That way back then, when we were talking about electronic arts, it was really microcontrollers and not computers at all.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can switch to the next slide, we can jump a little bit more to the present and about the Futurelab. The Futurelab is, so to speak, the think tank, R&D department, the atelier laboratory of the Ars Electronica. We try to create our projects as being sketches of the future, scenarios of the future, but in a way to invite into a discussion, into a discourse about that future perspective. So it's really trying to co-generate the future or co-create the future with a way broader audience that we can talk to. We're doing this by scientific exploration, artistic expression, and social impact in the back of our minds when we talk about it. Let's jump to the next slide.
And how do you design like a line of work when in terms of R&D, for example?
The important thing is let's jump already to the next slide, because that explains it a bit more about the team. We are a very, very transdisciplinary team. Just jump to the next slide, please. The transdisciplinary team means we are having members from all different disciplines: architects, artists, interaction designers, you name it. Here you can see it: physicists, industrial designers, telematicians, biochemistry researchers, etc., etc. But also, of course, sociologists, media and media philosophers. So from all different fields of our society, we have different educational backgrounds, and our research questions are not like universities often are faculty based. Our research questions are made in a way that all of those, or even actually more of those disciplines, would be able to contribute to the discourse on that research question. And this is incorporated by key researchers that we are running. But we try to keep that as open as possible, as accessible as possible from all the different disciplines. Let's go to the next slide, just to give an introduction or an understanding also of where we are working at, or what we are working with. And this is fields of work where we want to go into empowerment and foster public creativity in the participative term, trying to create projects where a lot of like citizen design approaches where a lot of people could contribute to, as well as we want to have the tangible future visions on hand for a huge crowd, and ideally not only the experts, ideally having everybody from the street touching the upcoming future scenario, because that's actually what these are the persons we want to talk to about the future scenarios that we are involved in, and many other aspects like humanizing the technologies and this kind of field. And if we jump to the next slide, we are not.
Sorry for interrupting you, but I think it's important if we try to describe a little bit of humanizing technology, what it's the meaning for you in terms of having technology that becomes human, that's interested in how humans think. How do you understand humanizing technology?
I think the most important is that we need to judge technologies on different scales or different values than traditionally established. We have used technologies to more or less ruin the planet. We have incorporated industries that really kind of give us quite a challenge now with the climate change. The almost perverted thing is, the paradox thing is that we see the future challenge, the only way to cope with the future challenge, by utilizing technologies again to overcome the limitations and to utilize technologies in a way that they would contribute to a more humanizing technologies, more human living, and a more being more connected to nature, to what humans, to the environment that humans really would need. And that is not only the use of the technological systems, it's much more the design of the technological systems that needs to be changed from the mindset of how we generate technologies.
Yes, and the responsibility it charge also, no?
Very much so. It's not. It's the responsibility comes on a totally different level to it, because if you consider technologies being a tool for helping the humans, helping us, helping the society to create a more a valuable future, then of course you can't think about a market anymore. As society isn't a market necessarily, and society will have totally different requests and requirements as a target group.
Yes.
And I think it's about time. I come to that later in the slides as well. It is really about time to consider our global society as being the target group of what we are developing for our future.
Okay, thank you.
What we do here, just to on this slide, showing that we are embedded in an academic kind of network, international network, but in a way also to understand what the Futurelab at the Ars Electronica is doing. The industrial partners are almost more important. The reason is we are not a university. So the Ars Electronica Futurelab doesn't get any public funding. We have to generate our funds by our activities, working with the industry and working with not only industrial partners in terms of industries, but also like cultural partners in terms of participating in festivals or doing concerts and events and etc. etc.
Okay.
What we recently have seen is a very, very strong interest of the car industry. So that is visible here. Volkswagen is working with us, Daimler is working with us, Audi, BMW, Honda, Toyota. That is quite interesting to see that those older companies, older in terms of like 100 years and plus, are more interested now in our approach to work for and with the society than the new starters like Google, Facebook, these kind of companies. They might be more concentrated on the next quarter. The older industries are really concentrated on the next 30 years.
Okay. I think we have an interesting question here that says, do you think access to technology is one of the main challenges right now in terms of humanizing technology?
I think contextualization, creating a context for the meaning of the technology, or the meaning of the use of the technology, of the consequence, if you want to say so, is more important than the accessibility. The accessibility, of course, it's a very important topic, but it's growing very rapidly, and those technologies now that we're all working with are widely accessible already.
Okay.
The challenge that I see is we need to be more aware of the consequences of the use of those technologies, and we need therefore to contextualize the use and the technologies themselves in a better understandable way.
Yeah, totally.
And I just brought some examples of projects that we are working with to explain how we work. The deep space is this kind of big projection screen environment that we have. It's a 16 times 9 meter of wall projection, but also a floor projection. And if you jump to the next slide, the video would start and would give a better introduction to what this technology is capable of. Just jump to the next slide, please. And also I want to mention that such a deep space is available as well in Mexico. At the Centro de Ciencias in, sorry, I forget.
In Sinaloa, right? You told us it's in Sinaloa. In
Culiacan. Yes, Culiacan, sorry. And this infrastructure is, it's a fantastic place where you can, as you can see here, share all the different programs and program styles, from concerts to art visualizations to the medical visualizations that you can see here, to even operations where we have live recordings in the deep space. You share that together with others. And it's a virtual environment that you can see a 3D space, but you're not like hidden into a head-mounted display and, you know, closed away from the rest of the real world. You're actually having your own body in the virtual environment. And I think that's a very, very strong proposition of this projection-based infrastructure. If you jump through to the next slide, what we are using is the cinematic rendering as one project that we do together with Siemens. But the nice outcome, just switch through the next images. The nice thing is that this technology allows us to show super high-res imagery in a very, very, very decent quality of living patient data. These are living patients, and we use the technology of MRI and CRT to get to the data, and then without any further ado, we can visualize that in 3D in the deep space. And this is used by our local university to educate students, medical students, and have them give them a course in virtual anatomy. And that is really something outstanding, I think, compared to what has been done before, where you have, you know, your catalog of prepared data sets in different qualities. But here you have really living patients' data, and that's what a student's workshop looks like. the guy here on the right side, this is the Professor Fellner, teaching his students virtual autonomy at the Deep Space in the Ars Electronica Center.
Is it easy for teachers to adopt new methodologies for teaching, or have you find some, I don't know, some hard ways from them?
Well, it's depending on what the topic is that they are teaching. Like the medical doctor is quite easy now, as they have their own equipment in radiology, so they generate the new data sets. But we are also working with Art University, handing over that high resolution stuff to the students there, where they can create interactive environments or even time-based environments for their own courses. And the teachers take a while to adapt, but the students are way faster, I have to say. We are preparing everything. We are preparing, libraries for the access of the tracking, libraries for the rendering of the graphics. So that's all available in there, and students from all different faculties and all different institutes are having access to the deep space.
And we have a question from Gonzalo in YouTube that says, are you doing any projects related to COVID-19 in terms of your medical research?
Well, not in terms of a medical research, but in terms of dissemination, if you want to say so. What we've created last year was, it was called Deep Pandemia, a program that would visualize the status quo of the science. At this time, it was known, that was in September or August last year. It became known that the scientific proof was given for aerosols, and that corona is distributed via aerosols as well. Mm-hmm. So what we visualized and simulated in the deep space was people breathing without a mask, and the distribution of the aerosols in the space, and then comparing it with wearing a mask and seeing the distribution of the aerosols in the same space in different architectures, so to say. Like, what would it look like in outside? What would it look like inside the real dimension of the deep space? What would it look like in a shop where you have all the corners and the runways and stuff, so that people got a feeling for how important it is to keep distance, even if you're wearing the mask.
Yes,
through the aerosol. So that, yes, in that sense, we have adapted the programs to dissemination, I would say, connected with corona and the pandemic.
Nice.
Jumping to this project now that we see since a while, this is the Spexels. And the Spexels are drones, those UAVs flying, equipped with LEDs underneath, and they fly choreographed through the space. Maybe we can look at the next slide, look at the video for a while. It shows what it looked like in 2012. It was 2012. It was the first incarnation of that kind of swarm in the night sky. And also last year in Guadalajara, there was a performance done by a Mexican team who's running this kind of Spexel environment as well. Super proud of the laboratory's idea that really kind of made it across the world.
Yes.
There's at the moment, I think it's 130 different companies running that kind of business. That didn't exist prior to that show. So it was really creating not only a piece, it was creating a market here. But the nice thing on that piece is that we have seen it from the very beginning as an art piece. It was for us utilizing a new canvas, identifying a new canvas. At the same time, it was in a way a social statement. We've seen, in 2012, drones were dangerous. Drones were bringing bombs, and drones were used for surveillance. There wasn't hardly somebody flying around with a camera. And we've taken this technology that we think is a very beautiful technology back from the military and back from the industry to the civil society, and tried to show that this is a technology where civil society should get their hands on and utilize it for maybe even something beautiful. But that was kind of the intention of the project at the time in 2000. Let's jump to the next slide, please, because we were at a certain time we started trying to bring the stars from the sky down to the earth. And by bringing it down to the earth, of course, we were on eye level with those autonomous machines.
Mm-hmm.
And being on eye level with the machines raised a bunch of different research questions, like how do we communicate with the machine? How does those vehicles understand us, and vice versa? How do we know what they want to do if they are autonomous? And this was a very, very important and interesting question also for Mercedes, and they involved us into a several years research project. And the outcome of that research project is shown on the next page. Just go to the next slide, please.
And how do you join industry and research in terms of interest? The industry goes to you with a particular question. Do you propose questions to industry and they choose the right questions for them? How do you create those?
In this time, we were lucky. There was a huge event in Houston at NASA, and the futurologist of Mercedes,
mm-hmm.
he went there. And please wait for this video just a second. He went there, and they were talking about autonomous machines and how would they, communicate to each other, etc., etc. And he became aware of that new languages might be necessary. So he was then looking around in those experts groups who is actually doing something with autonomous vehicles already, and didn't find anybody like really working with it. And then was looking around in Europe, was looking around in the United States, and finding us playing around with the drones and trying to understand the drones and having fun, and also, the finger hurts when you touch them, etc., etc. So he got very interested in what we are doing, and he saw that we are actually already doing that, and that's how we came into discussion with him, and he brought them Mercedes-Benz to Linz to the Futurelab.
It was kind of like a serendipity of needs that joined in that moment, in that particular moment.
Very much so, very much so. And we were, publishing about our research, flying with the drones around and doing all kind of things, and they were finding us this way. So that car, really, what you see here is driving on the bridge in front of the Ars Electronica Center. That car really got its European premiere in the city of Linz. And now we could switch to the video, please, to the next slide, because that is a very, very important approach also of the entire Ars Electronica. This is exactly what I meant before, that we would like to hand over those technologies, those future technologies, to the normal, the so-called untrained audience, the not expert groups, to get hands-on. As you can see here, the people were just like running to the car once this car arrived at the main square. And we were out there. We tried to really push it out there and have these very, very open discussions about those technologies with everybody. Mercedes-Benz themselves, they were all of a sudden changing the way how they would approach the presentation of these kind of prototypic cars, because normally they are going to the what's it called, the International Automobile Exhibition or so, or the Genf Saloon, etc., etc. But there they only find the experts again. There they only find the car press. So all the experts that are thinking the same way that they think already.
Yeah.
Having the access to a grandpa coming along with his grandchild, asking stupid questions, this is like really a challenge for Mercedes-Benz at this point. And I think that was the most interesting experiment at the final stage. It was not about the technology; it was about the social experiment to really get that kind of future perspective out to the people, out to our society. What we are framing is the so-called digital humanism, and this is a very important aspect. Has a lot to do with humanizing technologies, though. But the digital humanism is kind of a counter proposal, if you want to say so, to the digital capitalism on the one hand, that ends up in utilizing customers as the digging gold for data. On the opposite side, we have the digital totalitarianism, the Chinese version of the digitalization, which as well isn't really digestible for democracies. So digital humanism could be a counter proposal for both sides. But what do we mean by digital humanism? Maybe you could switch to the next slide at this point. If we don't invent the future that we want, we probably would get a future that we don't want. And Joseph Beuys was actually addressing this on a very, very early stage a few centuries ago, and he's totally right. I think that the perspective that we have to take in consideration is that with every step that we take, we do change our future. It's, by every decision we make, and we make decisions all day long, by purchasing the one thing, we are deciding our future. By not purchasing the other thing, we are deciding about our future. So I think that's a very, very important fundamental concept, that future is created. Future isn't born out of the sky. Future is created by society.
And we have like a very important role. It doesn't matter if you're a technologist, if you are a scientist, if you are part of society, you have a role in choosing this future and working out together to build this future.
Very true, very true. And it's unavoidable. You are part,
yes,
as a human, of the society. And at that point, you are responsible for our future, as we all are.
Yeah.
The nice thing, though, and this is that's almost banal, but it's really kind of mind-blowing if you think about it. If you have a shared expectations about the future, then this creates a shared identity.
Mm-hmm.
And this creates a shared identity for a community already today. And you can replace now with a shared expectation by a shared hope,
Mm-hmm.
or a shared vision, or a utopian goal, whatever. As long as you share your expectation towards the future in your community, this is giving identity to the community. And not only for the community, but also for the others to look at you. And they would say, well, those are the guys who think that blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
So what's very important here is that the future and the expectation about the future is creating the identity way stronger than the past.
Mm-hmm.
Our traditions, the fact where we are coming from, the fact where we have been raised in, that's not that important when it comes to identity forming as the shared expectation of the future to come.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. That is kind of a promise that you can make yourself in a way. If you share the same goals, if you are value driven, then it is kind of a co-working with others. And that is why visions are so important. Like in the traditional model of this triangle, the visions, the capitalistic model of the triangle, if you want to say so, the traditional one, the vision is just like the top of the iceberg. It's built from the application's users' needs. So the users are contributing to the vision at the top, and the users' needs are based on the broad fundamentals of the technologies. And that's not an invitation by the Ars Electronica, it's actually Hiroshi Ishii. The most important perspective on that is that really, in terms of the lifespan, technologies are done, within a year, very often within half a year. The user needs are there for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the vision that really lasts for centuries.
Yeah. And it make it the social impact. It's right there when we can have a clear mindset of what we can achieve, what we would like to become as a society, and how technology can join us in this creation.
Right, very much so. Definitely. And the vision, the vision in that sense can become the compass for our society, for the compass for our future. I also think that when it comes to future, forecasts are something I would say almost dangerous. Because forecasts tend to prolong the present.
Yeah.
In the way we look at the future, if we try to forecast something, we only can see the world from the point where we are standing at the moment.
Yes.
And that is, driven by the present. So
yeah.
Forecasts are in danger to prolong the present. So I think something like anticipation.
Yes.
Is probably more suitable at this point to anticipate.
Yeah, somehow that point is where creativity and art thinking becomes very important, right? Because it's the only way we have to forecast in different ways to think about the future and to think of new opportunities and how to create it.
Yeah. Very much so, very much so. And it's also, again, shared values that do the shaping for us. If we are careful in creating the visions. But how do we do that? And now we are at this slide with art thinking already. Art thinking is more like a 360-degree approach, kind of. So in comparison to design thinking. Maybe we can go to the next slide. It would be a little bit more clear, as pretty much everybody would be familiar with design thinking, wouldn't you? Like, design thinking is an iterative process that would go from a certain theme or issue and try to, create solutions, find answers to the given issue. By understanding the possibilities and trying then, by creating the solution, utilizing the possibilities. But the very important thing for us is who is defining the theme or the issue. And if the theme and the issue is not on the right spot, then the entire design thinking process, the entire search for a solution doesn't work anymore, because you're answering the wrong question. So the most important thing is to find the right question. And that is what we call the art thinking process. That goes before the solution. That goes into a version that was a little bit too quick. That goes into a version where we first shape the vision, where we first shape the philosophy, and try to understand the possibilities, rather finding the right questions in order to come to an issue that could then be answered. So having that kind of joint vision together is the fundamental aspect that would lead you then through these 3 steps in the process: the inspiration, the envision, and the prototype. There were videos actually in this slide, but never mind, that doesn't change that much. It's the creative questioning that we need, is the future sketching in terms of envisioning. And what is very, very important, you can't stay on the paper. You have to go out there and try the proof of concept, at least the proof of concept. Try to prototypically envision or embody almost the vision in a model that is, you can work with, where you can make your hands dirty with. I think you're in mood.
Sorry, it's because there's plenty of noise right now in my apartment. So I was telling you that one of the most important things for us at CENTRO is that prototyping phase, where you do not end up with a PDF and just saying, is it possible to blah, 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 or maybe we could do this. I think we have the technology right now to prototype, even though it's not an end product, or maybe it's not ready for from a commercial point of view, but it solves a question or proposes a new way of looking at a question.
Very much so, and I think that's a very fundamental approach. You have to go to that step, because that is also, and that's important. I think that's why we are called a laboratory. A laboratory is itself, I mean, recently, as where the source is coming from, the laboratory was there to falsificate or validate a theory.
Mm-hmm.
But over the times, and in the recent times, the work in a laboratory itself became the research with getting your hands dirty. It's not the sequence of first the theory, then the falsification or the verification. It's actually a totally different aspect and approach to creating a question if you have your hands dirty, if you have your hands involved in something that is realized out of a creative idea. And probably the creative idea even is changing through the process of doing. And I think this intersection of leaving the PDF, as you say, and getting it down to a workable prototype, this is itself a very, very elaborated research methodology, meanwhile.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's why laboratories are so important, still very, very relevant.
We have some questions from YouTube. I was waiting for this question from Debbie because I don't know if you know Neri Oxman. She says, do you share the same similar vision with Neri Oxman, and have you worked with her?
Yes, just like last year at the festival, she was guest at the festival as well. So Neri was for the first time, I think, already like almost 10 years ago at the Ars Electronica Festival. So there's a lot of contact points, so to speak. I do share to a large extent her vision and especially opinion about education and how she is conceptualizing education on that level, definitely. And yes, there is strong correct, so to speak.
And we have another question from YouTube. How do you think humanizing technologies would impact human relationships, and what would be the social impact of such technologies?
Sorry, say again.
How do you think humanizing technologies would impact human relationships, and what would be the social impact of such technologies?
See, we are living in a time where those technologies are keeping the half of the planet alive in terms of relationships. It's very, very poor technologies in terms of, I'm talking about the video conferencing. It's very, very poor technologies in terms of social closeness.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, social distancing is a totally wrong term, I have to say, because it's physical distancing. We shouldn't be social distance from each other. So a totally wrong term, in my opinion. But anyway, humanizing, for example, video conferencing system would actually take in consideration that we need social proximity, that we need social closeness and human warmth. Video conferencing systems, as we know it now, don't really support that to a large extent. And that is what I'm expecting to pop up in the near future, that this manko, this missing part in our digital communication forms will be taken more serious and will be, I'm expecting a lot of proposals who would take these challenges in consideration. So this is what I'm talking about when we're talking about humanizing technologies. The technologies that are there are already quite useful, but still missing a lot of the portions that we would, for example, see here in video conferencing. The space between us is still endless, even if we're both on the same screen and see each other talking and acting. But it's a lot of your presence in the room is not communicated to me, and vice versa. And I think this is something, telepresence generally, is something that will change the communication methodologies that we have in the upcoming years.
And how do you balance, for example, when you say like our thinking goes a 360 view, how do you balance things in terms of technology, social thinking, humanizing it, how do you keep that balance for the project or for the question in research?
Well, it's never perfectly balanced, but the ideal project would have its relevance in art, in science, and in society.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ideal project that we're looking for. The nexus of all the three, super important. Still, very often there is an idea that reaches out. On the first glance, it is a totally technological-driven idea, or at the first view, it's a totally purely artistic idea. Just contextualizing, thinking about, and letting it being reflected by all the other team members, all of a sudden it shows, wait a minute, that's not only a technological geek idea, that is, changing the universe on the opposite side of the scale as well. So very, very often the first glance of the idea seems to be more in this corner or more in that corner. But by reflecting and contextualizing it in a bigger crowd also, it's very much a team effort, I have to say. That's a very important thing. It's becoming more clear where the strengths really sit.
Mm-hmm. And there's in our audience is people interested in your opinion around brains connected to robots in AI-assisted stuff and the cognitive part of computing. What do you think would impact our society? How do you think would impact creative industries? The possibility of being expanded like in a cognitive sense.
Mm-hmm. I think that artificial intelligence has a tremendous important role in creating things in the future. Well, that's at least one of our research topics here at the lab. Can machines create? Not only what can machines think, which never has been answered to 100% the question, but still we think that there is a certain ability to support at least the creative the creative side of living. But it's not the question, for us at least, it's not the question if who should be in the role, rather on this end or on that end. Should it be, more the artificial intelligence, or should it be more the human being deciding? I think what we are looking for is the collaboration. Yeah. Cooperation and collaboration between humans and artificial intelligence. So also in terms of the cognitive end, I think this is something where we just can benefit from if we take both ends for granted and serious.
Mm-hmm. It's a difficult question. I mean, in terms of the philosophical impact it could have for us, also the ego of creative sometimes, because I think most of the time it's like a competition of who is more creative, who is more envisioning.
Yeah, I also think it's this entire topic of the autonomous systems is not only a technological challenge at all. I think the bigger part, to be honest, is the challenge for our society. Mm-hmm. Are we as humans capable to accept eye level existence and coexistence with a stranger? Yeah. History teaches that we are not very capable of doing that, and we don't accept strangers. We rather would accept slavery. And that leads, I think, into a very, very strange situation with what machines would be treated as. So I think it's a big challenge to our society, philosophically, politically, and socially.
Yeah, because we program machines in an imperative way. Our programming languages are imperative. Most of them are imperative. The way we think around designing processes for machines are imperative. So I think that's very interesting what you say, because how do we expand or even our way of creating what they can achieve in terms of collaboration? It's a very deep questions in terms of I think we don't even have the tools right now for it.
Right. We don't even have the language to describe it correctly. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, very true.
And there's another question from Luis in YouTube. What do you think about our own virtual agents constructions and the implications for creatives and artists?
Our own virtual agents.
Yeah,
construction.
To being available of having virtual agents, how do you see it as an opportunity for creatives and artists during the next decades? Do you see, I think his question is more related, do you see like an opportunity of growth for market maybe?
I think that in general, on the topic, of course, there will always be something like a market for creatives. But what I think is even more important is that we would be open to understand that society isn't the market. Society isn't like what we need is to understand that we need a fundamental change of, and I need to translate that because I'll have the translation in a second.
Okay.
The decoupling, that's the word that I was looking for. We need to understand that we need to have an absolute decoupling of prosperity and resource consumption.
Okay.
I think if we can't manage to do so, then we all have a problem. The creative branches, the industrial branches, the engineers, the scientists, we all would have that to overcome that challenge. And how to do it, I have no recipe to do it. But I think that is where we need the creativity to think of how to solve that issue, that we still stick so hardcore on resource consumption.
Yeah.
We need to separate. And that is, I think, one of the most important steps for the future. And will there be a request for creativity? Oh, damn, yes, there will be. We need a lot of it.
Yeah. And we're reaching out for the end of the talk, Horst. If you could have like an ending message for us in terms of Latin American ways of understanding technology, what could be, from your expertise, one way to design this compass as a society?
I'm not sure if there is that much difference on the globe that on this scale or level Latin American society or community would have another solution for it. But maybe one to think of is that science is generating knowledge. Technology is generating possibilities. But it's only art that is generating meaning. And if you have that in mind, you can't go wrong.
Yes, I think that's a very impactful quote in the Ars Electronica vision for understanding technology and science development and putting it all together. So we are very thankful for your time, Horst. I hope you guys have another opportunities to join us at CENTRO in Mexico. You told us you love Mexico, and coming to Mexico, you're going to be very welcome for it.
Yeah, I came to thank you both. Like, obviously, thank you, Roberto, but thank you, Horst, for joining us all the way to Austria. Yeah, we hope that we can visit you there and you can come and visit us here. It's been an amazing conversation. That's what's amazing about this kind of interdisciplinary approaches, that you talk about technology, but you talked about the future, about society, about everything else, about art. So thank you both for that. We will be following up for people who have been in the register to the event. We will do a follow-up with quotes. We will do a follow-up with more content, so you can keep on thinking about all that Horst and Roberto have been talking today. So please join us on our next VOR Lives. If you didn't register to the event, you can leave your data in the comments and we can contact you later. But thank you both. It's been an exceptional conversation, so inspirational, but also critical. It's been great. Thank you both for being with us. Horst, thank you for having this time for us.
Yeah, thank you for having me there. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to pop up in Mexico, even I'm sitting here in Austria. And thank you, Roberto, also. I enjoyed very much the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you to you. And thank you, Gonzalo. And thank you, CENTRO, and all the people that were listening to us.
Yeah, thank you all. And you can please join us. Our next VOR will be next week. We are going to have a conversation with Notco, who's a very interesting, innovative business model that plays with artificial intelligence and makes interesting vegan food. So please join us to continue thinking about technology, artificial intelligence, but now regarding food. So we have different perspectives on that. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you both, Horst and Roberto, again.
Thanks, everybody. And I want to say hello to Maria Jose, as I see she is also on the channel.
Yeah,
okay.
Hola, Maria Jose.
Bye.
Bye.